So I had originally written part of this script for this video over a year ago, but couldn't get my thoughts in order properly enough, and it just came off as way too aggressive. But with the reveal of the Switch 2 and the details surrounding the thing, I am dusting off this script and I have quite a few thoughts for Nintendo as a company, so I hope you enjoy the ride. Whether you play video games or not, there is a very high chance that you have heard of Nintendo in one way or another. And I'll bet you even your grandma has heard of them and also has a Wii Fit pad underneath her mountain of Werther's originals. The games that Nintendo has published and created have been landmarks in gaming, releasing games that have been a pillar in almost every video game genre. And the best of these games have been absolutely life-changing. Nintendo as a company has made some of the most innovative consoles and titles to this very day, and video games as an industry would not be as it is today without them. So for that, I am truly grateful. But when I'm a fan of something, I strive to be as unbiased as possible and give my criticisms. So I say what I'm about to say because at my core, I love Nintendo games and want this company to be better. Nintendo as a company is anti-fun, anti-consumer, and they need to be held accountable. Let's start with the point that inspired this video the most. As of the writing of this script, the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct aired 4 days ago on April 2nd, 2025. This presentation was made to be a showcase of everything that the Switch 2 is able to do with its new tech, as well as new next-gen titles that will take advantage of this new hardware. I was pretty excited to watch this Direct as I was hoping to see some cool games and see the new system at work. And let me tell you that this Direct was really something else. This Switch 2 is really something else. Look at how powerful it is compared to the Switch. This is just incredible. Everything was so well paced, with the young technological leads that worked on the console directly giving all of the presentation announcements. It was a nice change of pace from where the Direct announcements would all be given by senior staff over and over again. While presenting the Switch 2 and its capabilities, there were some really impressive games showcased that could run what looks like pretty well on the console, like Elden Ring and Cyberpunk 2077. Having a Nintendo console that can allegedly run some games in 4K and 120 FPS feels unreal for a company known for being so behind on the times for the last few generations. And get ready for Nintendo's next revolutionary invention to the Switch 2. Discord.
I don't fucking have Uno, motherfucker!
So many amazing games were announced. For me, the highlights were the new FromSoft game Dustbloods, which seems to give off a Bloodborne vibe, which is a series that has been held in captivity by Sony for literally no reason. I was so excited to see that vibe return and just have more Souls games because they are so peak. The other highlight for me was Hollow Knight Silksong getting 4 seconds of footage and a 2025 release date, which for a community as starved for attention and love as the Hollow Knight Silksong community, the fans went animalistic. As a new Hollow Knight fan, I didn't have nearly as long of a wait as the rest of the community, but I am so hyped to hear that the game is coming out later this year, and you know I'm going to be tearing through that, and if it's bad, you guys will not hear from me for months. And the new Donkey Kong game looks absolutely perfect in art style and gameplay, and I want to play that real bad as well. But yeah, the Direct as a whole gave some super cool announcements for me and for the Nintendo/gaming fans in general. It was really well done. But as I finished watching the Direct, I noticed more and more worrying things that would only linger and grow in intensity in my mind. First, I noticed that something was missing in the Direct, the actual price of the Switch 2, which is $450 by the way. Well, that is not the worst thing ever. I mean, it's still cheaper than consoles like the PlayStation 5, and the Switch will actually have games on it, so I suppose this can be excused. Just a bit steeper than I expected, but whatever. Next, I went online to see if I could find more information about the Dustbloods game, only to find out that I missed the part that said the game was a Switch 2 exclusive. Honestly, guys, I could make a whole video talking about my thoughts on this game and its concept for now, but let's just leave it with the fact that I was now even more disappointed that this was locked to a console. This was when the final and hardest hitting punch hit me right in the face. Select Switch 2 games, like Mario Kart World, which was showcased in the Direct, will be sold for $80. So listen, I can take a lot of crap from Nintendo, but now they've gone and done it. Now, I'm going to be careful because there's a lot of misinformation going around about Switch 2 prices, so I'm going to try to stick to official sources and not jump to any conclusions that do not have evidence to back them. Let me state this plainly though. Nintendo pricing some of their games at $80 is nothing but corporate greed. Nintendo using this $80 game pricing is them utilizing a system where they seem to be varying the price for some games, but not for others. For example, the new Donkey Kong game will be $70, while the previously mentioned Mario Kart game will be $80. $80 as a price for a single game is absolutely absurd and is nowhere near acceptable. In the video game industry, $70 for a brand new AAA game is a recent change that I already hated, mainly because the price increase did not feel necessary at all. You would expect that games with more budget, like the $10 extra received from a $70 game compared to a $60 one, would give the developers more money to make incredible and innovative experiences. But we can see in the years since the game price increased that AAA games, I would argue, have been the worst that they have ever been. If a AAA game isn't flooded out the wazoo with microtransactions, then it is straight up broken and unplayable, looking worse than games from last generation. But we were told, hey guys, the price increase is mainly because of rising inflation and longer development cycles. I was willing to accept this, as games had cost $60 consistently for a really long time, and it made more sense that games would get more expensive in a world where everything was getting more expensive. But now, $80 as a price for a standard version of a video game has been released to the world, and you know the rest of the video game industry will look at this and know that they can get away with it. Do you think a company like EA, one of the greediest and morally sullied video game companies around, will see an idea of charging their copy and paste sports games for $80 and say, no, we've made enough money from games, we will keep prices the same? No, it is profit, profit, profit here, boys, and if Nintendo has led the way, then we can do it too. Screw the consumers. There are so many more points that I can rail on that here's a fast list. Nintendo is charging money for upgraded version of Switch 1 games, with some games coming with new content. Seems like a deal, right? Well, if you want the 8-year-old game Zelda Breath of the Wild with the Switch 2 version, the DLC is not included, so that's going to run you $90 for the whole bundle. A large number of physical games will not be stored on the cartridge anymore. Instead, the card will just have a download code for the game, making a physical copy practically worthless. You cannot use their Discord feature if you do not pay for Nintendo Online, meaning that without Online, the C button on the right Joy-Con is completely useless. The software that acts as a welcome guide to show you what your Switch 2 can do, the Switch 2 Welcome Tour, will cost $10. Sorry, no freebies here. Don't look at the fact that Sony's Astrobot series started as a free pack-in game and actually was a fun game for free. Regular microSD cards will not work with the Switch 2, you can only use the microSD Express cards. Individually, these points are easier to swallow, but when I keep hearing news about the Switch 2 is quote-unquote innovating and making all of these anti-consumer decisions, it makes me severely worried about the console. And let me counter some of the arguments that people have been making backing up Nintendo for how they are pricing these games at $80. Well, back in the old days, video games used to be way more expensive than they are now, so this is no different from how they were before. Let me start off my counter argument by stating one simple fact. Video games are the most financially profitable form of media on the entire planet. Not movies, not television shows, not books, not music, nothing. For the years that the people that make this argument are referencing, the video game industry was in its infancy, which meant there was a lot less money to be passed around because there was a lot less of an audience. Because of this, in order to get any sort of profit in such a high-risk market, you needed to make good money on each copy of the game that you sold. Furthermore, the only ways that games were distributed in those times were through physical copies. And in the case of physical game cartridges, they were notably more expensive to produce than disc and later on digital copies. The combination of these two aspects would create a market where games had to produce way more profit, and consoles tried to as well. Ideas like that are what created the consoles like the Philips CDI, and every moment I avoid thinking about that console is a happy one.
I just wonder what Ganon's up to.
Only Link can defeat Ganon.
Great! I'll grab my stuff!
But in the modern age, you can buy brand new video games while sitting on your couch in your underwear with your credit card already entered into the console. Compared to before, there are very minimal production costs that go into making game copies today, especially since the majority of game sales are digital, so less physical copies are needed. And the tariffs that were created by the current administration were unveiled to the public after the Switch 2 Direct aired, so they could not have known about the tariffs before and use that to account for the prices. So with a brand name like Nintendo in an industry that is currently booming, the rules of the past do not apply. Well, development costs are so high that we need to increase the price of games to match this. This entire topic could warrant an entire video on its own, but let me break it down into the basics. I want to preface that I am not a video game developer, so I cannot speak to the specifics of video game development, but I do have some figures that I can use as a reference. In modern gaming, we are used to seeing headlines like, "This massive video game was developed using $1 quintillion but only sold 4 copies." But I would like to remind everyone that this is a problem that publishers and developers are having with ballooning scope. Every game that comes out that is AAA has to be the biggest, most impressive open world game that you have ever seen that costs so much money and needs to make an absurd amount of money to recoup that cost. Because of that, games are much more focus tested to be the most inoffensive and safe game possible that can appeal to literally anybody despite what the series might have been previously. But let's hold up for a second here, guys. I have an idea. What if we just look at these super expensive, massive games and just not make them? Don't get me wrong, I love me a game that gives you hundreds of hours of content, but not every single game needs to have a high budget. There are plenty of ways of giving a small development team a medium to small budget for a game with a small scope that can easily make its money back, since a smaller amount of buyers are needed to recoup the cost. This puts less stress on the developer and gives a company more releases that can possibly hit the jackpot of mega fame. Games do not need to be made more expensive because developing costs are getting more expensive. In the current industry, ballooning budgets and their subsequent failures should not be taken out on consumers for higher prices and low-level developers for losing their jobs. This is their fault. Do not let them make you pay for their mistakes. You would think that with such dedicated fans as Nintendo has, Nintendo must be super nice to them. Well, you would be mistaken, because as the evidence tells me, Nintendo actively makes being their fan one of the hardest jobs in the world, as they constantly spit in your face and call you names. Let me just list a few of the shitty things that they do to their fans constantly. Banning streamers on Twitch for playing a game early, only for the streamers to actually be playing the game when it was released. It was just in Australia where the game came out earlier. So Nintendo came after people for living in different time zones. Shutting down fan tournaments all the time, one of which, the Big House, was shut down because they were using a mod that made Smash Melee multiplayer online. This was because these were the years of the pandemic and you could not have tournaments in person, so you needed this mod for the tournament to work. In 2020, a fan of the streamer Etika was selling custom Nintendo Joy-Con controllers for charity because Etika had recently passed away. Well, Nintendo saw this act of charity and sent them a big fat cease and desist. Be gone, evildoer. In 2023, a 54-year-old man with chronic back pain but a passionate tinkerer learned how to mod a Nintendo Switch to get third-party software on it to aid in piracy efforts. What do you think Nintendo did next? Send the guy a cease and desist and make him take down his work? Well, you would be right. They did just that. Oh, and by the way, they also made this guy serve a 40-month jail sentence, pay a $14 million fine, and he'll have to give Nintendo 25 to 30% of his income every single month for the rest of his life. Holy shit. I could just keep going on and on with these news articles. If you look up on the internet for even vague ideas of events of Nintendo's misdeeds, you will be flooded by dozens of articles of the company treating their dedicated fans like shit. A company isn't entitled to loving their fans. It is just a business transaction after all. But to be outwardly so aggressive towards the people that give you money and then still charge them out the ass is just so scummy. Well, after all of that discussion, I hope you see more of where I am coming from when I am giving lots of tough love towards Nintendo. I loved the company in the past and want to see it become better. I will still probably get bombarded by dedicated Nintendo fans, but just know that I want the same thing that you do, for Nintendo to be great. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I appreciate your patience with me, as this channel is pretty freeform with its uploads. I have busy months, I have free time months, it just depends, but I hope this video was worth the wait. But that's it for me, guys. Peace.